Exciting.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give thanks to Sir Keir Starmer, leader of His Majesty's so-called government. Let us give thanks to the Prime Minister of Westminster for opening up our eyes to the puppetry of fake democracy within the so-called United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to Starmer, there were quite a few people who still believed in the illusion of British democracy. I was brought up with what I understood to be so-called left-wing values myself, with a strong sense of justice and fairness and even equal opportunity for all people. Ladies and gentlemen, I even believed that the Labour Party was against slavery. But in recent years, I finally realised that the Labour and Conservative parties are the left wing and the right wing of the same bird, and that they do the bidding of their masters, who are indeed super rich oligarchs. Isn't it true that when Jeremy Corbyn was elected as leader of the UK Labour Party, he was invited into a special meeting with the lack of intelligence services, who wanted to present him with blackmail threats that when called upon, the leader of the so-called Labour Party must do as they're told, or else be assassinated one way or another? Isn't it true that Corbyn refused to go to that meeting, and consequently he was assassinated with false accusations of anti-Semitism, a cynical exploitation of Jewish suffering, so as to remove Corbyn from power and have him replaced by someone more acquiescent, like Sir Keir Starmer, a chivalrous knight of King Arthur's Round Table? Is it total fantasy to imagine him on horseback, jousting with his long lance for the pleasure of Sir Jimmy Savile and Prince Andrew and maybe Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson? Let me get to my point. We must thank Keir Starmer for opening up the eyes of more and more sleeping people, especially those considering themselves to be on the left. One of the most famous things he has done is to proscribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group for throwing paint on an airplane, while simultaneously shaking hands with the new puppet government of Syria, despite their track record of chopping people's heads off. This was a masterstroke of Sir Keir, and we are grateful for his enlightenment. But ladies and gentlemen, there were still some people in the Labour Party who are skillful at managing competing priorities. After all, staying in power to protect the beloved best in the world National Health Service from even faster privatisation of the Tories must be weighed against holier-than-thou judgmentalism against Al-Qaeda affiliates who love head chopping as a means of demonstrating their affinity with Western democracy. Few of you can imagine how difficult it is to shake awake the comatose, brain-dead BBC propaganda consumers who are ready to give up almost any ethical foundations for sake of party loyalty. So when proscribing Plasticine Action as terrorists, worse than the Al-Qaeda head choppers, proved insufficient, then Sir Keir Starmer proved his mettle with an even more incredible and heroic feat of awakening naive, stupid people from their slumber. Sir Keir Starmer, I take back everything bad I ever thought about you. Sir Keir, I recognise you as my hero, my champion. Ladies and gentlemen, you may well wonder what has got into me. Allow me to explain the reason. I am so impressed by our frightened rabbit blackmail subject is that despite his fear, he has now shown us all in a very skillful way that Westminster democracy is corrupt and fake to the core. Ladies and gentlemen, I had previously been tempted by the Labour Party because of its opposition to slavery. And I can tell you there are many people in the Labour Party who genuinely believe themselves to be against slavery. Call me soft and privileged, but I have shed a left-wing tear when watching the American TV story Roots, where the shackled slave, Kunta Kinte, forced to America against his will from Africa, escapes and runs away from captivity, only to be brutally hunted down by minions of authoritarian elitist oligarchs, who then punished him by amputation for his insubordination. Ladies and gentlemen, with the digital idea, Keir Starmer is reintroducing slavery into the UK. The elitist, eugenicist oligarchs want to enslave you, and the Labour Party is obviously under their control. When Keir Starmer emphasises that you must be under no illusion, and the proponents and designers of digital ID want to take away your natural-born right to work without this centralised permission system, then we must give him credit, because he is openly highlighting that we have fake democracy to the extent that the Labour Party now pushes to reintroduce slavery. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all Kunta Kinte, and we will not comply with slavery. We will resist forever, for a very simple reason: slavery is bad. 250 years ago, some people in Britain were arguing against slavery on ethical grounds. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here today. The modern day equivalent. We are fighting against the modern slavery, against digital slavery. The digital ID is the principal means by which the wannabe pharaoh oligarchs wish to implement the modern slavery. Please be warned that this is not just happening in the UK. Digital ID systems are being rolled out in parallel across the entire world. This is a global slavery system to subjugate all humans, irrespective of race, irrespective of religion, irrespective of nationality or any other characteristics. These nonsensicals want to dominate everyone and everything, but they are too stupid to succeed. Their problem is that their hubris, vanity and superiority complex is so huge that they convince themselves of their own brilliance and capability to control. However, these globalist oligarchs are not capable to think ahead and control all possibilities on the infinitely complex chessboard of reality. So stay positive, because we are going to win this. Freedom is an idea which will never die. Can I get a Scottish call for freedom here in Edinburgh on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3, freedom! Ladies and gentlemen, the digital ID is being pushed by none other than Tony Blair. Need I say more? If you notice inconsistent hypocrisy and deceit when Tony Blair opens his mouth, it's a clue that what he is trying to convince you of is not something you would choose, given all the open and honest facts. The latest lies and deceit from the Labour government in Westminster are that digital ID will stop illegal migrants. But this is absurd, because employers already have duty to check credentials of employees, as if people traffickers care about obeying government rules. How ridiculous.